Welcome to The Inner Wonder. I'm Alex and I'm your host.
Hi thinkers. Together with us, Maximillian Hahnenkamp. Max, before everything else, is a friend of mine who worked together for a very short period of time. But even that period of time, it was short, one could see an incredible potential, even back then. A potential that has definitely materialized. Max is an Austrian entrepreneur. He's Forbes 30 under 30 at such a young age. He's the co-founder of Scavenger AI, a startup that provides data solutions for companies. The company very early on secured more than $1 million in funding and has won more than 6 international startup awards. Max, right now, at such a young age, leads a team of more than 15 people. Max, that's incredible CV at such a young age. But if I was to just remove your CV for a second and ask, who are you? What would you say?
Good question. First of all, thanks a lot for the nice introduction. I'm really happy to hear those words out of your mouth, Alex. I would say I'm a really, really curious learner. I think I'm a quite calculated risk taker. And lastly, I think very pragmatic and goal-oriented at the end of the day. So those three words, I would say, describe me the best, top of my mind.
You said pragmatic and calculated risk taking, right? And as a young age startup founder, one could say, wait a minute, this guy just started a startup at a very young age, but it's a calculated risk taking. Tell me more about that.
I really think in the end you have to be a bit crazy to voluntarily go into the startup world. But in the end, with calculated risk, I think in the end you need to be somewhat of a risk taker to go in the startup world. But I think in general in life, you have to take some risks. But in the end, I think they all need to be calculated. And I think especially because such a young age, now the risk of failing/learning is not as high as if I would do the same thing I'm doing now in 20 years, when I have like family, stable job, income, kids to provide to. I don't know what else is going to happen in the next 20 years. Versus now I'm like free if nothing works out. Obviously I'm not convinced that otherwise I wouldn't do what I'm doing. But I don't know, all things fail and everything is going south. I would still say this was absolutely worth it. And in the end, the risk was not so high, hence somewhat calculated risk also in the startup world.
Yeah, no, I love what you're saying, because oftentimes I think we kind of confuse the idea of, we just book everything together into risk equals craziness, right? Or like, we have all these stories of all these young tech entrepreneurs that quitted Harvard or these kind of schools, and then they became multi-billionaires. So it's the idea of that like risk is just like a crazy thing. But what you're saying is basically that it's you have to have a risk-taking behavior, but it can be a calculated risk.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm far away from being a Harvard dropout and a multi-billionaire, to be very honest. But in the end, it's the equation is not either you make millions of money or you failed. In the end, it's a learning process, especially at that age. Like, I don't know, if I would have gone anywhere else, I would not have let a team talk to the people I'm talking now, get in this huge environment and just this extremely steep learning curve that I'm experiencing now, completely apart from how the business is doing, which obviously is my main goal after all. But also for personal growth and the whole learning experience, that was already worth it. And I think here the risk involved was actually pretty low if you compare it to other possible outcomes.
Right. How is it, when you, let's say, immediately after graduation, you go on to start your own company, there might, you talk to investors, you talk to people really, with so much experience, plus you have to lead a team, right? So people, they expect things from you. How is that feeling or that responsibility in a way?
Yeah, well, to be honest, yes, responsibility is extremely high. And I would lie if I say there is not sometimes some sort of imposter syndrome involved. I think that's unavoidable and I just need to deal with it. But yeah, I mean, from day one, pressure is really high. You have employees to take care of. You have investors who are on your back, obviously, for the right things. But I think in the end, the most pressure comes from yourself because yes, there are external ones, but I think there's no one who wants it more than my co-founder and me, apart from the whole responsibility. I think in the end, the most pressure is what you want to achieve for yourself.
How do you usually deal with the moments when you just don't know something?
I think that's coming on a daily basis. I think the best coping strategy is if you have people around you, mentors who already have walked the path before and can give you spot on advice. I think it's pretty difficult to actually distinguish in the beginning because I think you get a lot of advice. Everyone loves to give advice, but I think there are only certain people where you know the advice is really spot on, you can trust in it, and that's the right way to do. So having those people around you who have walked the path already before, I think is really, really helpful and takes a lot of pressure away. How's it for you? I mean, you're also dealing with those kind of situations on a daily basis, I imagine, Alex.
Yeah, I think the keys to what you said about having the right people around you, which are the people that are heading more or less in the direction that you want to head, right? Because it's not that, as you said, everyone loves to give advices. It's not necessarily the advices are wrong or they're with bad intentions, but a lot of the times they're just maybe advices that would take you somewhere you don't want to take. I think a classical example is we talk a lot about, for example, the advices that parents might give, right? And it's just that it's never a bad intention. It's not like the wrong advice. It's just maybe they've lived, or the person that's giving that advice has gone through a different journey and is going through a different, end goal. So I think it's important to have people that are heading or have been through where you wanna go.
That's interesting. Honest question, how do you try to figure out if the people that are giving you advice are on the same path as you are?
Well, it's a trial and error. No, but it's a good question, Max. But that's why I think it's good to always be open to talk to people, right? And to just meet as many people as you can. I'm pretty sure if we isolate ourselves in a room versus just go out there, if we do the same things, probably going out there is going to lead us to a better outcome just because you're exposed to more things.
Yes. I think I 100% agree with that. Yes. The more exposure, the more you learn, the more impressions you get always helps. 100%.
How is you mentioned about your co-founder? How is the the dynamic in a company of two young people starting something together?
I mean, in the end, very fun. I think most of all we are friends, and I think closer and closer by day, because you go through. It's really a roller coaster. You go through up and downs, and that's on a daily basis. You're always close. I don't know. I wake up in the morning, I think it's gonna fail. I have lunch, I think I'm gonna be a billionaire, and at the end of the day, it all has equal outcome. So it's always extremely highs and lows, and I think going through that together, really creates a huge and a special bond between the two of you. And you learn a lot about each other, which is fun. And I think we are better friends than we have been when we started the company, where I would say we knew each other quite well, but now we are really, really close. I mean, I talk to him more often than I talk to my girlfriend or my parents. I'm fairly honest, which is something to consider about when you choose someone you do business with, I think.
Of course. How did it happen? Can you take us back to those, those days, those early on days when everything kind of was starting to come up together?
Yes, for sure. Remember, it was when we worked together. I really liked working there. Also there are up and downs, but in the end, I think it was a great company and I had an awesome time. Also comparing it what other people were doing at the time, really great. And I came back and I started thinking about the experiences I had there and what could be improved. And I think that's always something I love to think about as a kind of room for improvement, let's say like this. And then I studied and I came up with the idea, and then I went over to Felix, my co-founder, and was asking what do you think about that? And he was like, yeah, that's actually a really, really cool idea. And he had the same problem. And then, yeah, in the end, what did we do? We put together a pitch deck. Pretty soon we got money from an angel investor. And we had some first customers who were interested in trying out the MVP. And then in the end, you have to make the very hard decision of, do I really pursue this? Is this worth it? Or am I gonna go back to a stable job offer, which not only provides stability, but also would have been a great job. So it was really difficult to balance those two opportunities, I would say. But yeah, in the end, that's how it happened. You have an idea, you think about it, and maybe you're crazy enough and have crazy enough people around you who tell you to do that.
No, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And you mentioned that that decision, which both decisions could have been. It's not about having the right decision or the wrong decision, right? You weigh your dimensions, as you mentioned. What was that feeling, or what was, you would say, the X factor over one decision over the other?
I remember I had a talk with my former boss from the company I was supposed to return to. And at the time I wasn't decided yet. I was just having a call with her. I was telling me, I'm thinking about doing that. I also started this and I think it's very interesting. And I was looking for advice in the end from her to tell her what to do, and maybe also a stamp of approval, maybe now in hindsight, of not coming back to her in the end. And I don't know, she just told me that, yeah, my eyes lit up and she was like, yeah, it sounds like you already have taken a decision, no? And I was really confused by that. Like, no, I haven't. Like, I'm here to weigh the options against each other. And she was like, come on, your eyes light up. You're talking so much about it. You're really happy. You're absolutely excited. And then in the end, it was like, yeah, again, calculated risk. If not now, I don't think there's a better opportunity. Now the opportunity cost and the risk is pretty low. So yeah, in the end, again, talking to other people really helps. So keep for advice.
Do you believe in, because you mentioned about the eyes light up, and there's something I also think sometimes, that there is something that that makes you know what's the right decision. And oftentimes it's difficult to capture it, as you mentioned, that something might have told you what the right decision is. You probably was not really clear on it, but someone else was there to pinpoint it out. There's something that I don't know, just makes you say, yeah, go on.
For sure. I think deep down, when you look back at it in hindsight, it's always easy and you think, well, it was so obvious. At the moment, you just have some sort of feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of think what's going on, yet you cannot really articulate it. You're in a loss of words, and you think it's a rational decision. In the end, it's not. I love to believe it was a rational decision. I really liked it, as I said before. Love to calculated risk. I know what I was doing. We sort of, in the end, you're weighing things that you cannot articulate against each other, which makes it difficult. I don't know. What do you think about it? About your eyes lighting up? Do you think it's something that comes from somewhere, or it's just
I don't know if it's biologically driven or anything, but I feel like deep down if what you're doing right now is good or not good, or when you hear about something, you deep down know what's the right thing to do for you, right? It's just sometimes difficult to get it out there. I think that's for me the hardest thing. It's not really about knowing what's the right thing. It's more about, do I really know? Do I trust myself enough to know what's the right thing? Do I trust that feeling? I don't know. It's more about basically whether you trust that feeling and that it's gonna be, just to give it a shot.
I think actually you're a great person in making people realize that. I remember a couple of talks, late night talks, read about God and the world, a million different topics, where I think you're really good in, I wouldn't say listening, but pinpointing you in the right direction to make you say what you actually think of and what you actually want. I think it's a huge skill, to be honest.
Oh, thanks. I'm trying to make it with myself lately. I'm
I'm
having some debates, but like the other part of myself is not a good listener. But sometimes
standing in front
no,
of the mirror in the bathroom.
exactly. Really, just arguing with myself.
Well, if it works, Alex, if it works.
Actually, a couple of years ago, on this like point of self, improvement and self discussion, I had a talk with someone who is a therapist, and he told me that one exercise he suggests to his clients is what he calls the mirror exercise, which is basically about when you're thinking about something within yourself, is to do it in a mirror. And when you do it, you actually you understand how difficult it is to actually look yourself in the mirror and have a genuine discussion with yourself in the mirror before you reach, okay, I'm not, and then I was thinking about it, okay, when I dress up or something, I would look at myself in the mirror and stuff. But I've never actually looked into myself in the mirror and thinking. And then when I tried it, it's incredibly difficult. It's incredibly difficult to stare at yourself in the mirror.
But what are you articulating difficult thoughts to you, or are you giving yourself prep talk speech? Or like, what are you saying to yourself when you're looking in the mirror? Or what was the therapist suggesting to say?
So the therapist suggested, well, as a first step was to just stare at yourself in the mirror for 30 seconds, then 40 seconds, 50 seconds, just to build like a bit of an awareness with yourself. In a way that if you do that, you try to, get closer to yourself, right? And then basically, sometimes when, you have to think about something or want to make a decision, and you like discuss or like you write it down or stuff, if you do that in front of a mirror, you kind of see yourself in it, right? You see yourself, how you're reacting to it. And, it's just, you notice things that you wouldn't notice if you don't look at yourself in the mirror. And it makes it more real in a way.
Interesting. You need to try that.
It was pretty cool. Do 30 seconds tomorrow and let me know. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, I'm gonna do it. I never tried it. I mean, I looked in the mirror once, but I've never tried to stare myself down.
Max, you were a hockey player, right? Back in high school, you played quite a bit of hockey. I remember one of our conversations that one day you were in a physiotherapy and you saw Dominic Thiem there. But just playing professional sports, do you think that had some sort of like an impact in yourself or how you behave, or how did, let's say, being competitive in sports help you shape up your personality?
Yes, 100%. I think it's a realization you make over time, because while you're doing it, I know it's business as usual and very natural to you. Now thinking back, I think what it really shows you is that skills and talent is great, but in the end, it's hard work that distinguishes the good from the great. And I think I've seen many people who were like probably the most skilled, the most talented, but yet didn't put the work in and the hours in. And in the end, it was always the ones who put in the hard work, the effort, the ones that wanted to, make their hands dirty and so on, who succeeded and came out on. So I think that's something you really see and that shapes you. To be like, talent is not enough. You really need to put in the hard work and the hours. And that really gives you some sort of determination. Because you know what you need to do to achieve it. And that's some sort of motto I live by still today. I think, but it was always whatever I achieve, or even when I studied for tests at university, I always wanted to know, and after I did it, no matter what the grade is, but I wanted to know that I could not have done more. So if I studied for 5 months straight and I failed the exam, well, okay, but I could not have done more, versus when I studied for a day and I wrote a B or something, I got a B, something like that. That would really piss me off, because I know, well, that was not, you didn't achieve your maximum, you didn't reach your full potential. And I think that's also something that sport teaches you. And the last point, then I'm done with my monologue, is I also think the team. Like if it's a team sport, I think it really shapes you and you know how to act in a team, work with different characters, and try to achieve an overall goal in the literal sense, even in some sports. Might not be your own. So long story short, yes.
No, for sure. You know, when you mentioned the test result, one thing that I used to sometimes tell to myself is that the exam finishes right before it starts. In a way that, of course, it doesn't, but in a way that basically the moment you enter the exam room, you've done your prep, you've studied. You know, that's where the moment basically you've done all you could. Of course, you have to perform in the exam. Of course, there is other variables there, but in a way, that's the moment where, you know, the result is the result. And it's about differentiating the result between the effort. So I completely agree. I love what I really, really, really love what you're saying in that sense, because the process is by far more important.
I mean, you play professional sports as well, no? Do you think that you have the same opinion because of that?
Yes, 100%. Even though it was an individual sport, it's still the same, because you always wanna win. There is no way that you lose and you're happy, right? Even if you've tried really hard, at least if like you've really put the hours, if you lose, you're not happy, and I think that's fair. But I think what like really sometimes what you remember from that is, you know, the effort and the process that you went through, which is, I guess, what you really can't control, right? Because the outcome, you somehow can't control it.
Do you think regarding that it actually makes a difference whether you play team sports or professional sports? Professional high level?
I would think so. I've never really played like team sports, besides for fun with friends, but I've never really played team sport. The only way where I would play in part of a team was if I was to play doubles in tennis, right? Which I actually enjoyed a lot more than singles, if I have to be honest. But which is probably a sign that I should have played team sport, maybe. But I guess there is a component of difficulty in the team sport that you really control less things rather than the individual sport, and you probably see that in your company, right?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, you need to rely on other people and also try to get the best out of them. I don't know, create an environment in which they thrive and they deliver their best work, their best performance, because that's at the end of the day we know that very well in our company, that in the end it's gonna thrive or fail based on the people that we have there. And that's always something we ask, like, what do you need that you can bring your maximum level on a daily basis? And I think that's the same in sport as it is in a company, I think. Because you're not
What did you find? Sorry, go ahead.
Already.
No, on the statement of what could make you perform the best. What have you found are some, let's say, points that are common among people that usually people need to perform from the best, from your experience?
It's really interesting because I honestly think it really depends. In sports and now at work, like we have people who told me in the first interview, I need to have an office and talk to people on a regular day. I need that to be creative, to bring my best work, to just enjoy doing what I do. When I had others, there are other people who I don't want to talk to anyone. I want to be in a tunnel for 24 hours a day and then look up from the laptop and magic is happening. So I think it's really individual what you need to perform at your best. And I knew that also from sports. Like there were people who wanted to be super focused before games started. And then there were people, including me as well, who just wanted to be really chill, relaxed and joke around to make the tension go away. So I think it's really individual. What do you think?
How do you manage, let's say, building a culture, right? Or in the team, for example, in either in the sport or in the company, like you're, let's say, putting up a culture, right? And I think it's very common in many business and many companies, where the culture, Google say Googliness, and like these kind of places have like, their identity. Yet I fully agree with you that there is individual contributors to motivation and performance, right? To people. How do you think it's the best way to balance these two, right? What your company stands for and how it works versus what the individual needs to thrive?
I think there's a big difference in sizes of companies.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think at a very small size, like we're now 15 people, it's the people there that make the culture. Like you cannot write a cultural playbook and expect everyone that just because you write something in a book, no, that's what the company stands by. In the end, it's you who make a hiring decision. It's you who are a best practice and should be an example for everyone else. And also you who hire people who are not necessarily similar to you, but I don't know, have the same mindset, the same values, are driven by the same purpose. And I think that's pretty easy in the beginning, because you're talking face to face to everyone and you can build this huge bubble of people with the same goal. I think that gets pretty difficult and you need to have this sort of cultural playbook, as I always call it, that sets some certain values that you want people to be followed by. Because you cannot rely on one person to do all the hiring decisions, to talk to all the people inside a company and shape that culture. So I think there is a stage where you go from it's unofficial to you need to put it to an official level. And
right.
To be really honest, because I also think in sports, I don't know, you're 11 people on the pitch. It's manageable.
Right. I love how you mentioned something and then you said, and I haven't been there. And it just, I think really this sparks that you're in a journey and you love it. You're like, like you're in a journey and you're learning and you're growing and you love it. And that's I don't know, it's amazing. That's amazing.
I mean, yes, it's every day something different. I mean, you need to imagine like a year ago, we were 2 people, basically. Now it's 15, so like it already changed a lot from that. You're somehow, from doing everything yourself, being 100% operational. I mean, which still say I'm 99% operational, but somehow you also need to manage and you've never done it before. I don't know, every day it's a new challenge, but it's fun and it's a journey as a society.
Right. It's pretty cool. Max, in the last 2 years, right, more or less, the journey has been going on. If you had to choose 2 moments, okay, one moment, the moment you felt the most, overwhelmed, stressed, you're like, fuck this shit, I shouldn't, like. And the moment where you felt like, I'm rocking it, this is it, I love what I'm doing, like it's, I'm on the edge, of Everest. What those 2 moments would be for you?
Okay, I would say the first one where, I don't know, you really have a lot of doubts and you think, why am I doing this for? Is this really worth it? It was before we had our first funding round. And you need to imagine, like, I don't know, it's Felix and me, the 2 of us, really early in the business. So like there's barely a product working. There are some customers who somewhat use it. So it's, I don't know, I would say it's everything on very, very thin ice. And then we started to raise this financing round. We were like, okay, to bring it to the next step, we have some early signs of validation, traction, everything is going quite well. To put it to the next stage, to grow fast for several strategic reasons, now we need to get capital and deploy it. And at this stage, where I would say it's on such thin ice, the whole business is like, I don't know, you put a tip on it and everything breaks. That managing with the pressure now that comes from external people who are, I don't know, doing due diligences, pressure checking everything, and you get 100 no's a day or like 100 no's over a month until one says yes. And then you go through a 3-week process with your lawyers, I don't know, late at night when you already barely slept the night before and so on. So this was really where I was like completely overworked, at the feeling nothing was working. And I was really doubting, like, why am I doing this? That can't be it. Like, I know I need the capital for a greater good, but this process is not fit. I would say that was the rock bottom. Then, at the end, I think there was a changing point this summer where everything went successful. In the end, we raised around, we had the investors who were happy. We started to build a team. We had a product that was really shaping up. We had the first customers who were getting pretty happy. And then you're sitting there and you're like, well, what I imagined a year ago on a paper, a random thought, now is a reality. There are people who are executing it. There are people who are buying it and loving it. And you're in the middle of the process. And like this feeling of creating something is, still gets me.
The feeling of creating something, is that attached to the vision you have for yourself, for the company, to create something that will have an impact?
Yes, I think that was always one of the driving forces at the end of the day to create something. Can be any area of whatever, but I love to create and build things.
That's very nice. That's very nice. Max, in the Inner Wonder podcast, how we go about it is that basically in every episode we choose a muse. We call it a muse, which is coming from ancient Greece, which is basically they were like sources of inspiration. They would use muse to write books or to write plays in theaters, etc., etc. So basically it's a source of inspiration for something greater. And for this episode, you are the muse for us to explore, a theme of taking a courageous decision, taking a decision that, might not be the most, let's say, obvious one. But I wanted to ask you, in your life, maybe it's in the last 2 years, maybe it's before, and maybe it has changed, but what has been your own muse? What has inspired you? And it could be a person, a book, a movie.
I think it was, and I need to watch out that my girlfriend is not listening to this podcast because we have hard debates about this. Not sure. Do you know the book Brave New World by Huxley?
No.
If not, then it's a great news for you and you should read it. It's basically this picture of a dystopian world. And we often debate whether it's utopian or dystopian. Like it is clearly is dystopian, yet there are some arguments to make
Right.
whether this might be a utopia. And what I thought of this was like, okay, there are two things that really drive me in this world. That is on the one hand technology and on the other hand also a bit politics and how interconnected those two things are. And that's something that fascinates me, that drives me. And yeah, a book that I think about regularly actually. And I think it's been more than 2 years. But for the sake of putting it in the rules of the podcast, let's say it was not 2 years ago.
That's pretty cool. How did it go about like that? Did you just come through the book, or how did it go?
I would say Narnia I read pretty fast, and this one I read extremely slow. Like I think it took me ages to read it because I was like, I thought a lot about it while reading it. And every time I thought, okay, this is clearly a dystopian book and it clearly shows you the negative parts of the world. Yet there is so much that relates to today, and there's also so much, if you twist it slightly, it could be a very positive thing. Yet just because of the framing and because of some small decisions in it, it goes in a completely wrong direction. And I think this is so fascinating, especially I'm convinced that at the moment we're in a crossroad when it comes to the intersection of technology and the value it plays in our world. And I think we easily speaking, but I think there are two ways we can take that. And the difference is extremely small in what we do. And I think this is a great book that shows exactly that. Also, that's why I want to contribute something, in my obviously opinion, in the positive direction that we could evolve with technology.
Nice. Thanks, Max. I'll read it out, and definitely sounds like I have a feeling you told me about this book some time ago. I have this feeling.
I can ship it over if you want to.
Yeah. That would be awesome. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Max, we have a small, let's say, tradition that we do at the end of a podcast, which is basically a small visualization, right? So it's I would like to ask you if that's okay with you to close your eyes, and then I'll just read you through a small visualization, and then we can briefly discuss about it. Perfect. So thinkers, if you're listening, close your eyes for a moment with us. Imagine yourself standing at the node of a crossroad, but before two open doors. Neither is wrong, neither is right. Each one is an invitation to potentially a different kind of life. Behind one door, it's a structure, a clear path, a name you can say at dinner parties. You know what's expected. The light is steady, the air is warm, the chairs are comfortable. You can grow roots here. Behind the other door, there is a space. No one's laid the floorboards yet, but that's cool because you yourself can shape the room depending on what you like. Might be a bit more tricky, but it's gonna be up to your likings. The walls are to your design. We often frame these moments as choices between right or wrong, success or failure, courage or fear, but maybe they are not that. Maybe they're simply mirrors, revealing what we value, what we long for, and what we are willing to carry. So, Max, if you can open your eyes, and I would just like to ask you, what did you think? How did it make you feel? And how did you see those two doors?
I think it's super interesting. It's a really interesting mind game. It's difficult because I think in the end you think they're completely opposites. I personally am convinced that either way we choose, you can still always make the best out of it and make it your way, basically. So I think there is no right or wrong, or no path for someone that's the correct one. I think the choice is always made for a certain reason. And in the end, you can be happy through which door you ever walk and make the best out of it and make it your way.
I really, this is, I think, what I really also value, and thank you for saying that. You know that famous quote that says, "I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference." There is one very famous quote, and that quote often is misinterpreted as take the one that most people don't do, and that will make you successful. But in that poem is The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Actually, what he was trying to say is that it really doesn't matter which road you take, because at the end of it, you're gonna say, "Oh, I took that road, and that has made all the difference." And and at some point it says, that the grass might be greener always, on the other side. But it really comes down to maybe there is no right or wrong, and it's just a decision.
I think so too. I'm also convinced that no matter which decision you would have taken, probably would still be sitting here today and talking about maybe completely other topics, but still be sitting here and talking, And that's, I think, a nice thought. So I agree with you, yeah.
Max, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Alex. It was really a pleasure. It was lovely talking to you.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please consider subscribing to my channels and share my work on your social media. Until our minds meet again, enjoy the inner wonder you're creating. Thanks everybody. See you next episode.